Okay, this sort of video has been a long time in the making. Not that it's a big deal, but I attended the International Conference on Ocean Energy held in Melbourne last year, 2024, end of last year. First time it was held in the Southern Hemisphere, so it was a good opportunity for me to attend, as I live in Australia, and it was just a domestic flight to get there, and a lot better than me having to travel to Europe. The main reason for attending is obviously I'm an inventor of the linear turbine, which is suited for tidal energy, and other energy capture, even wind. But it was there to go there, see what everybody else was up to, get an opportunity to present my technology to people that were maybe using a turbine or a propeller, and maybe the turbine or the propeller was getting some sort of resistance from environmental groups or communities where they were trying to deploy their conventional turbines, which it is a case in just north of me here in Australia. Australia has good tidal energy resources, and there's a project there to the tune of about $300 million that's been stalled for about 20 years waiting for environmental approval, because it uses barrage type turbines, which are just not going to go well with the fish and sharks and the environment that they propose to deploy it in. So that's an example. So I was going there to try and see what other people were up to in the world, actually meet them face to face instead of Googling and just emailing the odd person. And I'm going to run through these 4 points on the side here in future videos, and I'm going to talk a lot about manufacturing, because ultimately if you're going to commercialize anything, it's got to be manufactured, and it's got to be manufactured at a reasonable cost. And I have a lot of insight into that, having been in the industry my entire working life. So the absolute number one highlight of the conference was the fact that I can have the linear turbine tested in the USA for free. They will sponsor, if I get through all the applications and the applications go well, they will test and give me data on the linear turbine at no cost to myself. I've got to supply the device, and I've got to get it to the USA, which is a much smaller cost than actually paying for testing. The testing itself was a big roadblock 4 or 5 years ago, when I was trying to get investors and raise capital to secure the worldwide patent. I ended up only securing patent in a few countries, as so far everything you see and every device you see is all funded by myself. The absolute highlight was the testing, because investors want data, and the alternatives we had before, just to give you an idea, to test for a week was 100,000 Australian dollars. And so it's still a big problem with the linear turbine for tidal. Is the overriding problem is there's nowhere to put it in the water. You imagine an inventor, he's sort of working in his workshop or his shed, and he runs out and tests the thing. Okay, that didn't work, this didn't work, back in the shed, work on it for a few days, test it again. It's just not available and just not possible. And sadly, the sobering part for me, the point number 2, was that somebody that actually has a device that is prepared to build a small device and actually put it in the water. I was the only representative at the conference from Australia. So as all my research prior to the conference told me that there wasn't really much going on with tidal in Australia, even though there's plenty of resource for tidal. there wasn't much going on, and there wasn't an actual site where you can test. There's sites elsewhere in the world, but like I mentioned, at this stage I'm self-funded. Having said that I'm self-funded wasn't that I was not offered money. But having been in manufacturing and having seen a lot of things in my time, I wasn't offered enough money. And it's not because I've been greedy, it's because I was being realistic. I don't want a failure. I don't want to waste investors' money. I'm not going to take investors' money. In fact, I sort of pride myself that I'm mature enough and wise enough not to take investors' money for something that's even got a small chance of failing. I don't want that. I don't want to be involved in that. So the other highlight of the conference is that I have made, in hindsight now, I have made some good decisions. The decisions not to take the money I was offered was a good decision. I'm still in it. I still have the patents in 5 countries. I still have the patent in the USA and Canada, South Africa, Australia, and India. And I encourage anybody to contact me if you'd like to use the technology, because outside of those countries it's free to use. And even in those countries, talk to me. I'd like to get something going, because, like I say, there isn't a lot going on. Now, I also watch internationally what's been happening, and you have successful projects in Canada in their massive tidal resource in the Bay of Fundy. There's a project there that's in a warehouse, that's parked in a warehouse that the government spent 29 million on, and it hit some roadblocks with environmental approval. Now, one of the other highlights of the conference is there's a couple of things that have been retired. There's an international body now that had a representative at the conference that have retired some of the environmental concerns. Fish strike has been retired, bird strike has been retired for wave and tidal energy. It doesn't mean they can't be raised, but they've been retired because the devices move very slowly. So those were sort of things investors used to bring up. So the sobering part is another. So there's that tidal project I was watching, and that has been in a warehouse for a long time, and I don't want to be that person. There's another one that the people do extremely good job of in Scotland, is Orbital Marine, but I don't see, I was hoping to pitch my linear turbine as I've said before, as an alternative to the rotary sort of fan type turbine like you'd see on a jet aircraft or a normal propeller. But those people just weren't there. There were people that are possibly going to have a project in Australia, for Europeans that are going to deploy their device in Australia. So there was some action on the tidal energy, but most of the people there were representing wave energy. And there's much more opportunity in wave to actually deploy your equipment if and when you're ready to test it. So I'm just going to leave it there, and then I'll continue another video. The absolute highlight was the testing, because investors want data, and given the difficulties with deploying a tidal energy machine in Australia and around the world, there's a lot to be done, even if you're somewhere else, but it would be considerably easier in the US or Europe. So I've long believed that the technology could be used for wind. So in the last few months, I've spent some time playing around with a wind version. Now, a wind version, because of the size, because a wind machine is inevitably much bigger than any tidal machine because of the density. You know, the water is sort of 900 times plus denser than air. So you know, to have a machine like you've seen in the previous video that I built, the concept machine out of aluminium, would be difficult. So I'm trying to get it to work with one arm, 2 foils, and only one lobe on the crankshaft. Now, what you'll see is machines that didn't work. I'm busy now rebuilding one that will work. And it's quite exciting, because what's happening is, even though we're testing it in wind, it's all testing, and the same technology and developments and innovations can then be applied to future tidal machines. So it's not totally in vain, even if it never gets deployed in a wind situation. But there are some advantages. So the other brief is because there's over 1 billion people that have no access to energy or electricity or pumped water on the planet, is what could we build? Because this technology, the linear turbine, is extremely simple. So the brief to myself was, if I went down to a local hardware shop and bought sort of the cheapest welding machine there and an angle grinder to cut up the steel, how far could I get? And what could I build with those really basic tools? So I'm asking you not to judge my engineering skills by what you'll see in the video. It's pretty poor, it's pretty rough. It looks like it's come out of a Day After Tomorrow movie, maybe you know, Mad Max, Gone Renewable, you know, it's that type of thing. So yeah, we had some fun. It was interesting, and I'll talk later about some of the discoveries we've made, which will solve some of the challenges I was having with the tidal, even though I hadn't built out a prototype yet. Please remember that all these machines are concept, they're not prototypes. I am busy building a wind prototype, which will be ready in the next few months. And I'm going to pump water with that, because that's the simplest thing, because electricity always gets a bit difficult with the RPM, the revs per minute, you know, the fluctuation with wind speed is a bit more challenging. So just going to pump water with it in the beginning. But that's enough. I mean, there's enough application around the world just to pump water. And the other thing I learned from the conference, or was highlighted at the conference, is the enormous infrastructure. You know, I'd only ever thought about the trucks that transport the blades for a wind turbine. But it's the ports, it's the actual ships, you know, a lot of countries just simply don't, you know, if they could buy 10 or 100 wind turbines, they just simply can't drop them off there. The port facility just can't handle it. You know, most of your port facilities all around shipping containers, you know, or some flatback shipping containers, but that's about it. So enjoy the videos, but please remember that concept type. Now, the other development that's happened, and that's why I've been a bit slow at updating videos lately, is I've also moved. So I'm no longer trying to run the wind machine in the driveway of the unit complex and scaring everybody around. I'm on a property with a bit more space, so that's also exciting, because when we want to test the wind version, it'll just be a case of, like I was mentioning earlier, you know, like you sort of, you know, you see the old inventors that were inventing things 100 years ago, where they're in the workshop, they're out the workshop testing it, back in the workshop. I've got that situation now, so it's pretty exciting, and there's going to be there's a lot in the pipeline. There's a lot coming through with the wind. There's other developments. There's other technologies I'm working on. So there really is a lot in the pipeline that's going to come through in the next sort of 6 months to a year.